Have you ever wondered what it takes to perform or hold space for a miraculous healing? And have you been curious about the difference between being a psychic and being a healer? Well, today's guest, Adrien Blackwell, has been a celebrity psychic on the news. Can you believe it? But over the last few years, she has developed her own curriculum to train people how to be healers for themselves and others. So we have a fascinating conversation in store for you. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, to the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our humanity and our divinity and what we're doing here on earth at this time of the Great Awakening. And what does that even mean? And all that stuff. So I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I love having these conversations week after week. And today I'm really excited to have a conversation about miraculous healing, because we are at a time when it feels like healing is the top priority, really healing from centuries of content from the lower brains that has been perpetrated on this planet, and now coming into higher consciousness, resolving everything to a higher level, really stepping into those higher brains, the frontal cortex, corpus callosum, starting to live our brains from the God brains, from the spirit brains, and, coming into our bodies and our hearts, opening our hearts in big love and compassion for the human experience. And it's a lot. It's a little overwhelming. And I think a lot of people are feeling it right now, and definitely having waves of exhaustion and waves of, helplessness and hopelessness and lostness and all the stuff that comes along with the dismantling of an old way of thinking and being, and the beginning of a new way of thinking and being. It's kind of like the caterpillar in the cocoon is like wondering why everything's falling apart. Its life is ending, but actually it's beginning because the butterfly is beginning. And that's what's happening with us, I fully believe. And so today on our show, we have a really wonderful person. Adrien Blackwell is here, and she has been a celebrity healer for a long time in her life, for a decade. But now in the last 12 years or so, she's been establishing herself as a healer. She has been a celebrity psychic from NBC News and E and VH1 and all these amazing news outlets. But she's like, you know what? People can heal themselves. Like, people need to have this wisdom for how to heal themselves. And I couldn't agree more. It's really a time when we all get to take personal responsibility. And so Adrienne's got, like, I don't know, 13 different modalities of energy healing. And so teaching people these methods is currently her passion, and sharing her wealth of knowledge and instilling confidence that you can do this too. This isn't just like select humans, like everybody can become a miraculous energy healer of themselves and for others if you feel like it, if you feel inspired by that. And she's developed what's called the Adrien Blackwell healing method. And so really exciting to hear more about this. Adrien, welcome to this show. Welcome to our Soul Nectar audience.
Thank you for having me.
Excited you're here. So, you talked about, I know that we're going to go into the other area, but I'm pretty sure that people are fascinated by the celebrity healer part. Could you tell us a little bit about that before we go into your current work?
Actually, I started out as a celebrity psychic. I did TV and radio for a really long time. And one day I realized that this wasn't my passion after my guides had told me for 6 years that, you're a healer. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. Like, you're a healer. I'm like, no, I'm not. And this is what's interesting is I actually started off, the very first thing that I did, even before doing professional readings, was I did a Reiki class. And then I would be invited to these places and people would be like, oh, I'm being told by spirit, I have to give you another healing modality. And I'm just like, what? And we're talking about years of this and me still arguing, no, I'm a healer. I'm a psychic. I'm not a healer. And I remember watching the news and there was a healer on the news. You've been around long enough to probably think like this is unheard of the first time we ever saw this. Like a healer on the news, what?
The
And
news, yeah, it's like, I
the
mean, that would have
news,
never happened when I was younger. Absolutely.
no, not at all. It would have been one of those things that let's debunk it, right? On one of those special shows. So I'm watching the news, I'm in awe, and my guides come in. I'm talking, they talk to me literally like you and I are talking right now. That's how clear they were. And they were like, you will be doing this in a number of years. And I'm just like how, you know how many people would feel so lucky to know what they're supposed to do? And me, I'm just like, no, I'm not. And here's the reason. I'm going to be honest about the reason. The reason was because I felt like as a psychic, because I could pull, you know, people's names or I could see things that no one else could see. It was like, this is what people are going to pay for. This is what people want. There's a gift that I have. I should be using this. And nobody's going to pay for healing. Nobody, I'm going to starve and die.
All the other healers.
You know, and so
Things
I'm
are
sitting
changing
here,
though. Things are changing, but go ahead.
and so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, no, you're crazy. That you do you understand how it works here in the earth realm? And then one day I realized that being a psychic wasn't helping anybody anymore. And I had saved like 2 people's lives at this point as a psychic, but it was seeing that it felt like it was far and few in between. And that most people were taking like the psychic stuff and they're, oh my God, it was like, okay, I know something's going to happen. I know that maybe it's not that great. I know that I can change it, but I'm not going to do anything to change it. So I'm going to come back to you next year and I'm going to get the exact same reading with the exact same information just to prove to you that I'm not changing. And then I'm going to do it again a third year, a fourth year, a fifth year. And somebody did it 12 years in a row. And I said, I'm done. I am done. And so I went to my guides and I said, okay, I need some help. Tell me what's next. And this one time they didn't actually say I was a healer, you know, they were being kind to me because they knew I was so resistant. So they said in about a year and a half, don't worry, we have it all figured out. In a year and a half, I started becoming a full-time healer. And it was when I started bringing all the modalities that I had learned over the past 12 years together. And that was incredible because I was thinking, you know, if I'm a healer, I want to do more than what I've seen already. You know, it wasn't enough that I saved my daughter's life using this healing technique, or it's not enough that, you know, people are feeling sick and then all of a sudden the sickness goes away. It's not enough. Like I want to look at mental disorders. I want to look at I want the bigger picture of why we suffer is what I want to heal. And finally, when I brought it all together, I was like, oh, that's possible. Okay, this is what I want to do. And my life has never been the same since.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of, you know, Yeshua's teaching, you know, you can catch a fish for a man or you can teach him to fish, right? Like, so that whole, um, that whole thing is important because a lot of people surrender their power to others, you know, anybody they consider to be an authority figure. And that is what we're actually healing right now. We're changing that. Like, you're the expert on you. You know, like nobody else can be the expert on you. You're the only one with that unique thumbprint. So you're the only one that can live that life, interpret it, figure it out, you know, wind your way through the maze of it. It's for you to experience. And on the outside, all we're doing is sort of peering into your reality and trying to decipher the information that we're getting about you. But it's really like everyone has the most direct channel of clarity on their own path when they choose to practice some healing modalities and tools, right? Like some clarity.
I have a balanced view of it. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that because the biggest change that I ever had in my life was getting a healer and paying for a healer and saying, you know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're less experienced than I am. And I'm going to learn how to receive because I have an issue with receiving. I like to be in control of everything, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
I
like,
admit it. Me too.
I sat and healed myself for 3 months straight. Every single day, I worked on myself for at least an hour, sometimes 3 to 5 hours. And that was one of the biggest changes I've ever had in my life. So I love self-healing, but nothing got me deeper than paying a man to be in my space when I was like,
Woo!
a man to be in my space and then take me to another level. And it's funny because I used to have my friend on the call with me, and she's like, she's embarrassed to talk about this thing, so I'm going to tell you because I don't care. And I'm like, that's the healer. That's what I love about healing work, is that I'm not buying into your story the way you're buying into your story. I'm not
Yeah.
buying into your ancestor story the way you're buying into your story. I don't care. I'm not attached to your outcome. I don't feel like it has to happen this way or has to happen that way. So I'm going to be able to get in there and do more than what you're going to be able to do. And it's really interesting because the brain, it literally functions in a way that it searches for danger 4 times every second.
Mhm.
We're actually negative bias, right? Our brain is always looking for the danger versus anything else. A healer can go in and start eradicating that because we're not having the same look out for danger that you are at the moment, right? We don't have the same ancestral patterns. So we're not sitting here saying, this isn't possible, this may not work. So we get beyond your blocks. So I think we're not meant to be here alone. That's why there's 9 billion people on this planet. We're pack animals. So when you think about it, there is a part of us that needs to be doing healing work for ourselves. And there's another part of us that needs to sit back, relax, put up our feet and go, you know what? I'm just going to let you have it. And when I have resistance, I'm just going to breathe into that resistance and we're going to keep on going.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is like the middle way, right? So like we can't be on either end of the spectrum. Like if we're only going to the healers and getting it fixed, then we're not doing any of our personal introspection and work. It's not going to work. And if we're only ever doing our own work and never getting at what you're talking about, that sacred witnessing, the external perspective, other viewpoints in, which is why I always have coaches. I've always got my coaches I work with because I know that it's tricky up in here. So I have somebody watching me be like, hey, I noticed you did this. Did you notice? No, I didn't. I did. Thank you for mentioning that. We need that. We need people that are sleuthy that can, detect your egoic paradigms, right? So you can expose it, become aware of it. And then when you become aware of it, you can change it. So it's both and, right? It's like, yes, both and.
Yeah, they have to work together at some point, and most people are going to start by going to someone else because they don't really know how to do it for themselves. But it's interesting how many people catch on to healing. Like people who have never done healing work before, they'll work with me for about 3 months and they were like, something came up and I was going to email you, but I actually cleared it myself. And I'm like, wow, how did you do that? You don't even know about energy work. And it's like, you just start to feed off of the people we're around. That's why your environment is so important, is because we literally give each other energy. We learn from each other. It's telepathic, it's DNA. It's like we're sharing all the time. So who are you sharing with?
Yeah, and that's actually, that is the experience that I have in my own classes, and I'm sure you have it in yours, where like that collective consciousness bubble forms. And then yeah, like we're all learning. Every time somebody gets a breakthrough, we all get it. It's like instantaneous almost, and it's so much easier to move through a similar thing in our own lives because somebody already did the deep dive on that. And so we're actually, and as the community is growing, I don't know how long yours has been going. Mine's been going like 3 years now, a little 3.5. And I've noticed it keeps getting stronger. It's like, wow, like every year it's magnified. It's like, phew, it just keeps lifting. And it's because of all the people that are in it. I can't claim credit. It's all of us together that are doing that. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like the community part is really important to this kind of healing for the planet.
What have you been doing for 3 years?
Teaching inner medicine.
This is my 3rd year. I said no. I said no, no, no. People would ask me, teach me, but no, I'm not doing that. And then one day my guides came in and said, it's time for you to start teaching. And I was like, no. I have this thing as, see, I'm still in control. You can't tell me what to do. And I was like, no. And they said, well, you'll get to teach in the way in which you wish you were taught. And I said, oh, I'm on board. I'm on board. Because the one thing I didn't like about teaching was that, when I first started this, I was like 19. And so this is how I started, 19 years old. And I really thought it was going to be like, okay, so you do a healing for somebody. It's going to be like this crazy miracle healing. They're going to tell 10 people. Those 10 people are going to tell 10 people. Those 10 people are going to, and, it's just going to grow, and I'll have like 100 clients in less than a year. And then I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to be able to take care of myself and take care of everybody else. And the reality of how this works is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I don't want to send healers out there not knowing how to help other people, because then what's the point? If you feel like you're meant to help other people, but yet you don't know how to help other people because you don't know how to get clients, what is the point of this thing? And so there is this whole entire, the moment my guides were like, you're going to teach what you wish you had been taught. I wish I had been taught everything at once so I can pick and choose what I need to use at the moment versus years and years and years of training and growth and teachers and, everything. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. That's what I want to do.
So
So
what
my
does
guides
that like? What does that look like for you? What does that look like in your trainings with people?
So in my trainings, we actually work together. Before it was 6 months and now it's 4 months. I kind of shortened it a little bit, but it's actually like 3 months of just learning and practice, learning and practice, learning and practice. So they learn another modality, they learn how to use this technique, then they go practice it. And they just keep doing this because practice is what brings mastery. And so
Yeah.
this is like repeatable. And then we actually have classes where we start looking at how do you start to build your business from this day forward? How do you start to get people who are like, okay, this is amazing. I want to tell my friend about you. How do you get the practice? Because one of the things that people I think fail to realize that it's not about just going to a class and learning something. It's really about in your practice because that's where you learn. That's where you grow. That's where you experience. That's where you get stuck and you're like, I don't know how to help this person. The healing just isn't working. So you go in and you're like, okay, show me something I don't know. How do I deal with this? Where am I being blocked? Where am I stuck? Whatever it is, right? And all of a sudden things will start to unfold for you. Or you get stuck in that space and you ask your mentor, like, hey, can you give me some ideas, some hints around this? And all of a sudden you start to be able to tackle anything. And because that's the way that I've ran my business and ran my healing work for myself, I'm relentless. Like, as long as I knew I was supposed to work with you enough to take your money, because I won't take everybody on. If I knew I was meant to work with you, there's something I can do about the problem. There's something that we can do about this together. So what does that mean exactly, right? So I'll be relentless. And I remember having like one of the hardest cases. And I'm like, we've been working together for a while. This isn't working. And I said, you need to show me what the block is. What are we missing? And I remember the next day I got it. So when we got on the phone, I was like, listen, I think I have a new way to tackle this. And as soon as we did it, she started giggling. And that was the problem. Like, she wasn't happy. She was crying on every session. As soon as we got on the phone, and it was like literally every time after that, she was giggling when we got on the phone. There was laughter, there was happiness. So it's that, but you don't get that. You don't get that in classes. You don't get that with just the little practice here and there. It has to become a daily thing where you're doing healing work on yourself or others to really grasp how to do that.
Yeah, it does take a lot of practice. I mean, it takes a lot of self-awareness too. And I don't know if you found this, but on the path of becoming a healer myself, I think I don't know, I've been doing that for about 8 years when I was a student, right? Because they said, go out and practice. Like, here's the modality. Now go do that for 3 months and, bring us back 10 case studies. And I was like, okay, I don't even know how to do this, but like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna like wave my rattle over your chakras and clear things. I have no idea if this is working, but like calling on spirit, calling on the lineage, right? So like trusting that this divine power is helping me, that I don't have to know it all, and I'm just gonna go do the modality and practice it, right? But I was like getting these insights, like you're talking about, like these revelations would come through, like this information. And then some of it was totally applicable to me. So stuff would come out of my mouth that taught me. And that's how I knew it must be working, because I'm learning from what's coming out of my mouth. I don't even know what I'm saying. And that's how it's been ever since. So it's kind of like fascinating, because that's probably the miraculous part, right? Is that we're so tapped in when we let ourselves be. And when we see ourselves and we practice, we open ourselves, right? And then the wisdom comes pouring through. So is that kind of what you're talking about with your own process?
There's a lot of different processes, but I would say, like, in the beginning, when I first started really practicing the work, because when I was attuned to Reiki, I wasn't necessarily practicing it. There was a student and we did trades, and we ended up moving from Santa Cruz to Sacramento at the exact same time. So we would keep up our trades in person. And it was fascinating stuff that would happen. I remember one time I was doing Reiki on her, and she's on the table, and all of a sudden I'm transported to a different place, a different time. And when I came back to, I was like, wow, that was crazy. And she was like, did you get transported somewhere too? And I was like, yeah. And we saw the exact same thing at the exact same time. Now, mind you, this was only one modality. 1 out of 13. And I still didn't want to do this work professionally because I'm like, it's not enough. It's just not enough. I was like, seeing past lives is great. People feeling better is great. I had one woman who was throwing up. She had a nosebleed. She had a migraine. I mean, there was all this stuff happening. I said, can I put my hands on you? And she said yes. And I put my hands on her. Within 5 minutes, the nose stopped bleeding. She no longer felt the migraine. She wasn't feeling nauseous. And I was like, do you want to go to the hospital? She was like, no, I'm going to go upstairs and go to bed. I'm like, are you sure? Like, that sounds like it was bad. She came to me the next day and she was like, I'm fine. And still in my mind, I knew it wasn't enough. I knew there was more. And I think people get, when they have miraculous things like that happen, I think they get stuck thinking this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And then it's not satisfying. They don't realize that there's still more. I knew there was more. I knew there was more. And so I was like, I have to find out what that more is, you know? And the fact that people are just getting rid of cancer, nilly-willy, and I'm just like, how is this? You know, I have to learn more about this. How are people getting rid of things like schizophrenia? And like, I've seen it over and over and over again. There has to be a way. And so that's what made me not give up. So it wasn't just the practice, because the practice was doing great, but for me, it just wasn't good enough. And when I finally put all the modalities together, I was actually doing a group healing session, and I didn't know half of the people that were there. Just going to be honest, I had no idea what was going on with them. But my business partner, one of her clients was in there, and the feedback that I got after it was the woman had just been diagnosed with breast cancer, and during the healing, she felt it leave. And I'm like, that's really nice, but that doesn't really prove anything. But I'm glad she feels better. You know, that's great. And 2 weeks later, the doctor confirmed that it was gone. And that's when I was like, okay, I think I've reached where I needed to be. I had a woman hire me and another healer. We were actually working together at the time to work with somebody who was schizophrenic. And so I think we did like 3 healing sessions, and she was like, the person had completely shifted, completely changed. And I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is it right here.
Yeah, that's powerful. So do you think it has to do with your own integration of the healing modalities, or your own faith, trust, belief, knowing? Like, what does the outer outcome have to do with your inner knowing, your inner reality, do you think?
I knew that I was meant to do healing work, and I knew that there was more, and that was enough. Many times I didn't believe in my own abilities. I thought you had to go to India and find a guru for any of this to work. I didn't think that it was possible for me to have that. So I don't think belief really plays a role at all at what happens. I mean, energy is energy. I feel like there just has to be a willingness. So there's people who are like, I don't believe in it, but what if it were? What if? Okay, so the resistance is gone, right? There's people who are like, I don't believe, but I'm dying. I don't have another choice.
Yeah,
So
that'll catalyze some faith.
right? So that the resistance leaves. The belief system doesn't necessarily change, but the resistance leaves. So it's really about who's resistant and who's not resistant. And where is the resistance coming from? Because I can deal with people who are avoidant. I'm avoidant. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Like, I know how to work with you. But you can be so avoidant that you won't let anything work, period. And so with those people, you have to basically just say, okay, I'm not attached to that outcome. If that's your path right now, that's your path right now.
Yeah, sometimes I've realized in my own journey too, 20 years on the couch talking about the problems, right? And then it's not really fixing or going away or changing. And that's when I left psychotherapy, and I was like, there's got to be another way, right? But there's addiction to suffering, actually. There's addiction to suffering, and there's also like martyrdom and self-deprecation, all these dragons that come in, like self-destruction, that can be addictions that people have that they don't necessarily see that that's what's going on, but they also don't want to let it go. So
Well, look at that as like a branch to a tree. So everything that you've mentioned is a symptom of a problem. It's not an actual problem. None of that. You can't actually heal any of that by knowing any of that or working on any of that. So if you're like, okay, you have an addiction, and so you have an addiction to suffering, and you actually went to work on that, it wouldn't clear. So you'd have to go, well, why do you have an addiction to suffering? Oh, it's ancestral. This is how your ancestors behave because this is all that was given to them at the time. And you're in modern time where that's no longer a reality, but your DNA doesn't know that. So has nothing to do with you. This is your burden, but it has nothing to do with you. So let's clear the ancestry and see if your addiction to suffering changes. So all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm just not doing the same. anymore. I'm kind of over it. And just to give you an example, I was doing another group healing. I love group healings, but I was doing another group healing. It was for New Year's. And this woman had messaged me like 2 weeks after the fact. And she said, I don't know who you are. I didn't know you from Adam. I don't even know how I got to your webinar. And she paid for it. And she doesn't remember why or how. And she said, you said, write down the number one thing you want to change. And she goes, I was like, this is never going to work. This is where I'm like the belief system thing. It's never going to work, but why not? Right. So she writes down her number one thing, and her number one thing was to quit smoking. And she's been a chain smoker for 30 years. All right. So she's like, it's not going to work, but I'm going to write it down. So I do the healing work. Now, mind you, everybody has their own thing that they've written down. But when I send out energy, it's to amplify whatever it is that you desire. Right. So it's going directly to you for whatever you need. So the energy is going to shift once it reaches you to get whatever you need to do the thing that you want to do. So she said the very next day, she took a hit of her last cigarette. She hadn't smoked for 2 weeks, and she's been a constant chain smoker for 30 years, couldn't stop at all. And I'm like, okay, because we're not working directly with the addiction. We're not working directly with the fact that you're smoking cigarettes. We're working on a root cause, the root of the issue. And then that starts to clear all the symptoms.
Yeah, I love that. And so that's why we go down into the shadows. We go down into the depths all the way to the root, the source of it, and then clear that out. But that could, like you said, that could be 5 generations ago. That could be 10 generations ago. That could be, and it's definitely not something you know about. Like usually, right? People don't know that that's a thing. Like I did not know that my trauma, a lot of my trauma happened when I was in vitro, like when I was in my mother's womb, right? And that early years that I don't remember. I don't remember those years. But because I had all those things happen, those were traumas, right? Parts of me fled, parts of me dissociated, and kind of my innocence kind of went over here. When that came back, everything just opened up. Like it all just went, what? And then it's like an avalanche of like, because I'd been working so hard my whole life without those pieces working with me, that when they finally got integrated, my work ethic was pretty strong by now. And now it just catalyzed all this growth because now I had this really strong work ethic plus all myself back, so I can really get stuff done. So like, it's kind of like, it catalyzes a lot for people's lives, right? To do this. The miracle is not just the healing itself. It's all that it catalyzes going forward, right? Like it's all of that life change that happens.
It is. It all comes together for you to basically hone in on your own modality. What are you good at? What have you overcome? What have you experienced? Because it doesn't matter what energy healing you learn, you're going to make it your own, and you're supposed to. Right? You become the leader because of your experiences, because of your practice, because of all of those things is the reason why healers become extraordinary healers when they're not just trying to copy someone else. My course alone is to help leaders become leaders. It's so that people can develop their own modalities. It's like, you're going to take all of this, you're going to learn a little bit of everything. You're going to decide by practice what feels the best for you, because you're unique. Whatever works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. So
Exactly.
the 3 most important modalities that I use may not be your 3 most important modalities, but what happens is as you use it, it shifts and changes. As you use it, you actually start to upgrade your mastery. And then all of a sudden, one of those modalities you learned 3 years ago starts to come into play, and you've never even used it before. But it's part of your upgrade. You're naturally upgrading by the things that you already know to even downloading things you didn't know. But that's the reason why it's so important to learn so much, is because you'll actually start to utilize that at some point, because we infuse it in your DNA. You know it. You've used it.
Yeah, when you use it, when you practice it, it becomes part of who you are. And then that is actually, like you said, it's like you can be taught the ingredients of the soup, but then you have to make the soup. Like
Yeah.
it's your soup. You have to put all the ingredients in that work for you. And other people, like some of my teachers look at me and go, I can't know why she's doing all that, and it's like, well, because this and this and this work really good for me, like it makes sense to me to put all these things together, like you're talking about. And then the people that are learning from me will have their own soup. Like they'll do something completely brilliant based on that out there. They'll take this piece and that piece and over here, and it'll, they won't even take the rest of this. They'll just toss it. But it's like, take what works and toss what doesn't, right? Because every one of us is a different configuration. We're all a unique thumbprint.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly, you could teach me and 12 other people how to do a certain healing modality, and I'll go out and help people with their love lives, and somebody else will be helping people with their health. I mean, it's just so unique that we literally take that energy and just transform it into something brand new, which is so beautiful to me, you know.
And I feel like we all collectively, like that's what I was hinting at before in the community, is that my experience of being part of several different communities, including my own, is that the collective consciousness just keeps lifting and raising and lifting and raising. And so everything that, the work that one person does is influencing everybody else. And it's kind of like learning by osmosis almost. So, like, I think people are learning faster and faster and faster. It's taking less struggle. My first group through, it was very much like, it was a deep dive, and it felt like everybody was really having to muscle their way up the mountain, and really learn this stuff. Second group got a little bit easier, but it went deeper and more profound. And now this year's group is just like, like they're just they're kind of amazing. Like but it's because I feel like they're in this container with all of us, and they're just learning by osmosis. It's just clicking, because everyone's learning together. We're like one organism.
Yeah, I didn't understand the significance when I was 19. I took a Reiki class, and one of the because it was a 6-week course. Like, it wasn't what people do today, which is like in a weekend. Like, we had 6 weeks to learn this. And one of our assignments was, because it was actually done at a college, but one of our assignments was to find a Reiki practitioner, pay them, and actually get a session. And it was like, okay, it feels like it did in class. Like, I really didn't understand it. And now I tell my students, I'm like, one of the ways that I learn is by paying other healers and seeing how they heal. And I'm like, oh, I feel that. Oh, that's different. Okay, I can use that. I can do that. So it is like learning through osmosis, because I'm like, that's one of my greatest teachers now, is just going and paying for sessions and actually experiencing how other people do things.
Yeah,
It's
and
amazing.
you have to experience it to understand it. That's the thing. And if you're empathic and you're intuitive, you'll pick up on stuff that they're doing. And then, like, for example, like we'll open sacred space at the beginning of all of our calls. I love the way some of the students open the South, like the words that they use, right? So I'll go, oh, I really like the way that they said that. And the next time I might use that, because I might be like, oh, I really like the way she said that. And that landed or it felt really special. I think it's the same thing. It's like we learn from others, even people that went to the same trainings that we went to, because we all see it differently through different lenses. We're unique.
Yeah, it was actually my teacher from 12 years ago. I had a session with her more recently, and she was removing like the spiritual scar tissue, and I felt it. Like,
Spiritual scar tissue.
I never heard that before, right? And I'm like, what is she doing? And what's crazy is I have more experience. I've been doing this for 25 years. So I have more experience than she does in healing. I know more modalities than her, and yet it doesn't matter. She has taken this modality, she has made it her own. She, like, whoo, that woman is powerful. So the moment she said that, and I felt it shift and change. I mean, I've been different ever since I got a healing with her. And I'm sitting here going, I'm gonna use that. I have to try that out and see if it works with other people the same way it's working on me. And does she do that on a regular basis, or was that something she just got for me? Because sometimes we just get things for certain people. It's just fascinating to me how we can just learn from doing the work ourselves, really, and getting healing with other people. It trips me out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the mystical part. That's the unexplainable mystery part. We don't really know how it works. And that's kind of why, like you were talking about when you were a psychic, on TV, right? Like what a huge moment that was, because finally our overall society went like, maybe there is something here, like opened that little tiny doorway to go, maybe. And now we have a lot more opportunity. I feel like there's a lot out there. There's a lot of, platforms that are talking about it, lots of podcasts, lots of schools like your own forming. And so then it becomes just a matter of letting people come to you. So that's one of the other things I'm sure that you also feel is like, because you're so unique, that's why I like to interview all different types of people on my show, because even though I am a healer, like all healers are different. Like everybody has their own unique medicine, their own unique perspective. And yeah, we can learn from each other. And this is something that my guides have always told me, is that we are, nothing that is yours will ever be taken away, right? So like it's yours it's yours already. So that means that we all can collaborate. We don't have to be, we're releasing that competitive, like sort of matrix that used to divide women, which was really to keep control over people. Because if women aren't relating and creating community, then things fall apart. And that's just kind of my belief system. You guys can take it or toss it, but it feels like when we women are relating with each other and we're celebrating each other and we're coming in, connecting and forming that sort of big spider web, that hoop together, then peace is the result, and appreciating everybody contribution.
Oh, yeah. And, even from what my guides have shared with me about the past, it was women came together as the leaders. They came together with community. What is it that we need as a community? And the men would then execute whatever was needed. And that's how we kept the community going and strong, is having that chain of command. And then we see how communities break away when men come together to try to create community. It doesn't really quite work. Because they're more, that testosterone, that in the energetics, right? Of it is very different, where women actually are supposed to be creating community and looking at what the needs are of the group. And so it's kind of backwards right now. But we're trying to, the pendulum is swinging. We're trying to find balance. And so it's so imbalance right now, because you can't swing a pendulum without it going crazy. You're either going to go one extreme to the other. So we're at another extreme, and one day it will actually come into balance. Yeah.
And when you get your messages from your guidance, do you also hear that this is a time when maybe all of the planet will be interested in healing work, like coming and
It's already
rectifying?
there. We've already reached it. Because there's been 3 or 4 waves so far. I'm not really sure how many, three waves, where people came in. The whole psychic thing has always been popular. And when you look at religion, it's all based on prophecy, which is really interesting to me. They're like, I don't believe in psychics. And it's like, have you read your Bible? Because it's really based on prophecy, which is, psychic readings, right? So it's very interesting that people don't realize that. But so the psychic thing has always really been popular. And in the 1800s, I don't know, what is it, Lilydale? Have you heard of Lilydale?
No. What is
Okay,
that?
so in New York, in the 1800s, it's still around today, but in the 1800s, there's this place developed called Lilydale. All the psychics and the mediums lived there, and they would do seances on a regular basis. So people would come travel far and wide to experience these seances at Lilydale. They're still doing it to this day. And it's literally a neighborhood of just, all these people who are doing this work. So it was really, really popular, especially in like the 1800s, the early 1900s. You can read a lot about how people would just do seances on the weekends for fun, like you throw a party. So it was the healing stuff that actually was the shift that needed to happen, because people were already interested in kind of like, there's a spiritual realm, there's ghosts, and there you can get information from spirits. But people really, I think, it was like the mindset stuff in the early 1900s, where we're starting to realize that we can change our reality if we change our minds. So it kind of started there, and then we started looking at psychology, and then we started looking at energy work, and all of these things kind of came together to create this whole, okay, we can heal ourselves, we can do something, we're in control of the reality that we're living, right? So that was the first aspect of healing that came forward. And then it became like the energy work, as they're starting to bring Reiki, Japanese type healing work. When we start to look at I can't remember, Eastern medicine and Eastern spirituality started to come over, and these things started to intermingle. And then the Western world starting to get on board, because we're the ones who weren't on board. We're the ones who didn't really believe in this, right? So that started to come over in little simple ways, yoga and things like that. Or it's like, okay, we really don't know what yoga is. We think it's an exercise, but it still started something, right? It still started a movement. And so there was this wave of people who were doing healing work kind of underground. And then they started to kind of teach their families or run away from their families so they could do this in private. And then it just started to grow from there. And I want to say, I started this in 1999, I believe it was, or 2000, 1999. And back then, I remember being shocked that Reiki was actually being done in hospitals, select few, but still they were bringing energy, because it was unheard of. Now it's like everybody knows about it. My daughter was telling me, she's 25, and she was like, Mom, it's all over TikTok. People my age are talking about what they have their own healers. I'm like, it's just a normal thing now. And I'm just like, wow, a lot has changed.
Yeah, not the reality I grew up in.
That's crazy. But that's how it started. It was just like these little bitty waves of people coming in that were kind of the way showers. And then people just kind of, it just grew from there, like over the last 70 years or so, 70 or 80 years. Yeah. Big difference now.
Yeah. And, you know, I would say the younger people probably would be more clued in. And, you know, people my age and up, maybe, or maybe not, you know, so it just depends on how we chose to focus ourselves, right? And how we chose to look at life. So it's interesting how the reticular activating system plays a role in what we perceive, right, in the world. And so yeah, we have these opportunities now. We have these opportunities to expand our understanding of the world around us. And I was also thinking about the brains that people were operating on. You know, the reptilian and the limbic brain through much of human history is why probably people haven't been so interested, right, or so aware. But now the frontal cortex and the corpus callosum coming online now, like these are brains that are God brains. Like these brains are helping us to higher consciousness, know like we know that, you know, we're sovereign and we're divine beings having a human experience, which is news, you know, for many, our ancestors didn't have access to those brains probably. So
Well,
yeah.
you have those that were, and this is where it's really interesting because when we talk, it's like we're only talking about a select group of people. If we look at it as a whole, you look at the indigenous people all over the world, whether you're talking about Native Americans or the Aboriginals, they've always had these connections. I mean, this was a normal part of their life is to have these kind of connections and to believe in healing work and understand the medicine of the world itself and the medicine that's on planet. Where we come to there's been a Western world for a really long time, whether we're talking about like the Middle Ages or the Romans or whatever it is.
I think it's back to the Romans and, you know, the
Right?
foundation of the church. Yeah. What
Yeah,
it
because
feels like.
I'm like, we have where these huge groups of people come together, where we go outside of the tribes and come into the community. And all of a sudden, it's like we get dumbed down to some degree. And there's a beauty in that. That's not a negative. There's a beauty in that because that's the reason we're all coming together to share this. It's not like little tribes here and there that are practicing this. We're actually coming together as a planet because of these changes. They're kind of coming together. The tribe is coming into the community. But yeah, it's interesting how this was a way of life for so long. And the more modernized we became, the less we moved away from it. But now that's where the pendulum, you know, I say there's always one extreme to the other, where the pendulum just kind of finds that balance, is now that we're not focused on our needs every day. You can go to a grocery store and get food. You don't have to farm. I'm not saying that's the best thing for us to eat. I'm just saying we're not worried about food. We can go to the grocery store and get food. We can grow our own food if we want to. There's a balance that's here, and we're able to do both. And because we don't have that worry, because we're not always in survival mode, because we're not worried about a potato famine, or we're not worried about being sick and dying of disease. It amazes me when I look at the past at how many mothers died in childbirth or how many mothers lost their children due to disease. I mean, we're talking about people who had 12 kids and 8 of them died. It's insane. But now that you don't have to worry about that on a day-to-day basis, what do we get to worry about? And that's where our spirituality comes in. That's where we start looking at, I can heal. That's when we start focusing on the things that are outside of our survival. And it's amazing. So it may not have looked that great over the years, over human history, but now that we can bring it all together, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, we have this great opportunity now with New Earth to do something completely different than humanity has done up until now because we do have this connection. And yeah, and there's still, you know, there's still tribal women that are still connected with the earth, deeply connected, tap rooted in, never lost a connection. And they're part of our collective consciousness too. And so I really fully believe that these indigenous tribes are helping us to wake up. Their prayers for humanity, their prayers for the planet is all part of our awakening. And I appreciate them for doing that. And despite how they were treated, still coming through with that unconditional love and praying for us, praying for all of us to wake up and to activate this part of our existence, the healing part, right? And the coming into the higher brains, that higher consciousness, and learning how to channel divine guidance from our own souls so we can live better on this planet. Adrien, is there anything else you want to share with people, you know, before we wrap up our time together?
Absolutely. I love the fact that you said you have gratitude.
Mm.
You have gratitude towards what they had the ability to do to still connect and to still care and to still have prayers for us, and how important it is just to have gratitude. It's one of those things that's been talked about for so long. I think Oprah's the first one who really brought it into attention that we need to have gratitude, and she had a gratitude journal. But when you really sit and feel gratitude, it changes the genetic makeup. It changes who we are. And I was actually just interviewing somebody recently, and she said, they've been able to measure emotions on a scale, and their love is like one of the greatest emotions, but beyond love is actually gratitude. There's something beyond love. It's gratitude. That's amazing to me, and how gratitude can actually heal. So I love the fact that you said that word. It just resonated so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I had to practice gratitude. You can talk about resistance. I had a lot of resistance to being grateful. I think my past lives, really kind of the last one particularly set me on this like I'm mad at spirit course, So I'm really pissed off that I had to go through this. So, in this life, gratitude has been, something I've opened my heart back up to, and being grateful for this human experience, being grateful to be here and practicing gratitude every day. I think it's such powerful medicine. And then you live better because you're healthier when you're grateful, your brain chemistry changes, everything works better. You see things in a better way, create less drama. It's worked for me. It definitely has worked for me. So, well, beautiful. Thank you for coming on this show. And is there any way that people can find out more about what you do? Is there a place you'd like them to start to find out more about you?
Yeah, adrienblackwell.com. It's E-N, not A-N. So if you spell it right, you'll find my website, and you'll be able to get some free gifts, some energy healing recordings, which people have literally said there's been miracles that happen just from push and play. So I make it as easy as humanly possible to heal.
I love that. Beautiful. So I'll put a link in the show notes below to Adrienne's website, and also her bio and all her other social links. So you can go find her on the socials. And so I like to end my broadcast with a request that everybody share this episode out to anybody that you think would really resonate with it, and just help spread the word. And also, we're going to give you kisses. So would you like to help me give Reiki kisses to everybody? Here we go,
Sure,
everyone. Here
yeah.
come your kisses. We love you. Okay. Mm.
Send some energetic kisses from the divine.
Yes. We love you. We love you. We love you. And we'll see you the next time on Soul Nectar Show, everyone. Have a great week. Take this love with you. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken away to show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.